Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of the D-Clock podcast, and my very special guest, one of my most favourite people in the industry, who I've actually only met once, right? But we did a talk together, we hit it off, and Gwen Diagram is one of the most astute people I've met within the industry, especially from an engineering point of view. So everyone, virtually say hello to Gwen. And Gwen, how are you? You okay?
Yeah, I'm brilliant. Thank you. It's so nice to see you again because, we just met the once at Scott Secure and had a brilliant time. So, thank you so much for having me on. It's great to catch
And likewise, I think it's been a year, and obviously we had a bit of a catch up before the call. And what I'll do is I'll introduce you to the Decloaked. Well, I don't even know what we'll call them. Followers.
Amazing.
I make this up every single podcast. But anyway, Gwen, obviously I'll give everyone a bit of a background. You were an engineering manager at Monzo Bank, so obviously good engineering principles at Monzo. Head of engineering at Glean. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. And obviously you set your own company up, Diagram Industries Limited, and you do a whole host of consultancy and everything else on the back of that. But yeah, obviously I've kind of given the brief overview of you and your career. And, probably I think what would be best for our audience would be, talk me through, any of your kind of advice through your career. We constantly hear it's very difficult for people transitioning between engineering, security. I think you've done quite a lot of different engineering items. So just talk me through some career highlights, anything that you want to kind of discuss or share with the world, or any funny stories. Yeah.
Sure. So I originally started off in IT support and I moved over into testing. So I was a tester for a really, really long time. And I absolutely loved testing because you get to work with so many different people, and I love getting to work closely with developers. So I was doing a lot of automation, API stuff. And then I was principal test engineer at Sky. And at that point, I was running a whole bunch of workshops, and I was running a whole bunch of unsuccessful workshops. Some of the workshops no one would turn up to, and I would sit there very lonely. And so I was trying to figure out how I could get people coming to a workshop. And I don't know where I heard about Juice Shop. It must have been at a conference because I was always at conferences at that time. So I got a couple of people together and I ran a security workshop, and it was madness. I had at least 40 people come. I had people come down from Scotland for it. The security people from Scotland came down, and they were like, "How the fuck did you do this? How did you get people interested in security?" But it's easy because people are interested. They just don't know where to start. So, that was a bit about how I ended up doing security stuff. It was by chance, really, trying to figure out how I could make an impact. And then after that, moved to Monzo, engineering manager there. That was really good in learning great engineering management practices. So lots of Lara Hogan kind of stuff. And then moved over to Glean, and Monzo set me up really well, understanding all of that, head of engineering. And then, so at the moment, I'm just doing my own thing with Diagram Industries. So lots of that is mostly kind of some of the conference stuff. So I do hosting events, lots of Ministry of Testing work, which I love. And then I'm doing a lot of work for Agile on the Beach as well, sorting out next year's conference, which is really exciting. And we've also got the Test Atelier, which is another conference that I'm involved in. So getting all of that kind of thing set up. And then just doing a lot of DIY at the moment as well, because I like building stuff and breaking stuff. I don't know if I have anything wise to say, but maybe I'll have something wiser as we get on further.
Yeah. It's funny because there's a clear correlation between the obviously engineering testing, figuring out if things work, break, obviously pivoting into OWASP to shop, again finding vulnerabilities, software items that need patched, fixed, whatever it may be, and I can kind of see that whole kind of train of thought. And I remember kind of circling back to our talk last year, year before, I can't even remember. And I think what really surprised me was your ability to make education, especially within whether it's engineering topics or security, like very easy to take in. And that was a tough crowd we had, to be fair. I remember just fucking banging my head off a desk at some of the questions, and I had to just being like, oh my god, man. But I think we forget sometimes that there's clearly a huge portion of people who have never really made that transition layer between technical, non-technical roles. And they always find implementing a security culture quite a challenge. And is there any kind of tips you would give to anyone about how you would introduce a security culture?
Yeah. So, well, one of the things with teaching people about it is always provide food, and people will come if there is food. So if you're running any workshops, do that. But also on the other end, people want a security culture, because people don't want things to be on fire. People want to be proud of what they're building. The best way to make engineers really sad is by not actually deploying anything that they build, but also making them build rubbish. And people don't want to build rubbish. If they can learn better skills in how to make things more secure, they will come. So yeah, I ran a security workshop at Glean as well. And with that, I got people involved from around the company as well. So I got legal and IT involved. That was one of the things that I found very successful when you're doing something like this. Get other people involved. So one of the developers I got involved at Sky has ended up becoming a security professional. They're a pen tester now. And security always seems like a black box. It's something that you can't get into. And once people find that door, they might be really, really interested. So open up the workshops for anyone to join to help teach, do the research and all of that. And yeah, that's probably one of the main things.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. We used to run a multitude of workshops, and we did it was based on the IBM Ninja. So we'd create gradings and belts and stuff, and have people challenge a black belt. It was full on. In my head, I'm this delusional 80s child, right? And it's the Karate Kid tournament, the All Valley tournament, and I used to love it. I'd hear the theme music in my head when I'd see a white belt challenge a brown belt to a cross-site scripting, or maybe trying to do a hack the box item, and then that kind of opens up the multiverse of security, because I think we can be quite negative about security as well. I think I've been guilty of it many times, but I think when you open that up to people who maybe haven't really experienced security, or maybe you can automate something like GDPR for legal or privacy, and then they start to open up, and then they want to do GRC, and then it's that whole multiverse opens up. The next thing you know, you've got the whole Spider-Man bit. It's the meme, the GIF, whatever. They're all pointing at each other. But anyway, I'm going on a complete tangent as I do. But kind of going back to your career then, Gwen, in terms of any challenges that you faced that you think that people can learn from. Again, they can be personal, they can be professional. It's entirely up to you.
Yeah, so probably the biggest challenge I faced while I was at Glean was I have been in engineering for I don't know, it's 15 years or something. I've been in engineering for ages, and my partner is a tester. My partner before that was a developer. I hang out with engineers. Part of the thing with being in a head of engineering role is you need to work with people outside of engineering, and they communicate very differently. So in engineering, we love an argument, and people outside of engineering don't argue in the same way. And it's really confusing when you first come across it. And so trying to figure out how to communicate with these kind of people took me a while, took me a hell of a lot of research. And in the end, it's just figure out what motivates them and talk to that. And yeah, just figure out what motivates them, play to that, and make sure you're focusing on that when you communicate with them. Otherwise, God, it can go so wrong. And I think it took me about 6 months in my role to start properly cracking it. I would come away from conversations and it's like, why did that go wrong again? Why have I failed here again? So yeah, have you experienced that as well?
Yeah, I think it's about finding common language that people can understand, but also like we forget how busy it is in engineering, and like even more so in security engineering teams. Like when I was at Flow, we had a red team, blue team, purple team. Man, we had all the colours of the rainbow, but that was quite unique for the company. You know, they just wanted you to either be engineering or product, and it's like, but you have subcomponents, so you would have maybe like testing teams. So you'd have like different types of QA, you know, and people you'd have like, I don't know, automation testing. So you would have like people that did manual testing and then automated testing, and everybody has a different type of approach to things. And even when it's like non-technical roles, where like, you know, in Flow, we were kind of seen as a bridge between engineering and non-engineering. So we had quite a good advantage of being able to communicate and build language between people. So we'd be a translation layer. And I think that's what I'm trying to say is, you know, when you're in various different roles, I think it's quite important to listen, first of all, understand why someone's on fire, and understand why things keep breaking or don't kind of succeed when you're trying to implement. And that could be a whole number of things. Like maybe they just don't understand the tech stack. Maybe there's like, I don't know, a regulatory requirement that's like that thick coming from a book that an engineer's just like, is this 10 lines of code? You know, is this like a full 2-week sprint? Like somebody give me the requirements. But again, if there's no one acting between those layers, it can go arse up effectively. Yeah. But I don't know. Is there anything else you want to add into that?
So with that as well, like when people aren't doing their best work kind of thing, and you're like, what's going on here? People want to do their best work. Everyone wants to be good, you know. And yeah, I think trying to figure out what the root cause is instead of demonizing people helps a hell of a lot there as well. Because yeah, sometimes it does seem to go the other way. So
yeah, I think you know, I think you've mentioned it a couple of times. People want to do good work. I've been in organisations that don't even know what a good standard is. Like I mean, from a quality point of view, or you know, you'll look at, I don't know, a whole host of Terraform, and you're just like, oh my god, what's going on here? And you'll see like kind of like they don't have standardised templates, or they don't have a standardised approach, and it's just like people just configuring maybe a kind of root or a base file, and it's like, what's going on? It should be. But then you talk to them and say, by the way, have you heard of this blog? Have you seen this guy, female, video, dog, horse, whatever, you know, that's out there that's doing these things? And it's like, I think once you start to take people away from the internal aspect of it and they look outside, they'll go, oh, so that's what Netflix are doing, or the Spotify team, or I don't know, you know, like all these engineering blogs that are super cool to look at. Because I think you need to let people breathe when they're in their roles to, I guess, research what good standards are, so then they can get a level of comfort and then say, hey, that's the North Star, that's what we should be aiming for, you know, because Netflix do it, you know, or Apple do it, or Amazon, or whoever. But yeah, I think unless people understand that, it can be quite crazy. I know people that are like, they'll go to startups and they'll have maybe one good engineer, and then you've got several hundred other people that are just passengers. How do you then, is it your responsibility as a leader to kind of get everyone galvanized, or do you just kind of like the person that gives them hints? It's like the whole Prime Directive initiative in Star Trek. Like if you go in and intervene, it could completely destabilize that civilization. You know, sometimes you need to just like, I'll just subconsciously plant something, so then they like discover it. Oh, they've got fire, and it's like next thing you know, they've built a city, and it's like, I mean, just sitting in your Starship Enterprise looking at them like, this is amazing. You know, a few months ago they were living in a cave. Now they've built their own ships or whatever. I don't know. I'm big on the sci-fi, but anyway, I digress. But I mean, in terms of like your specific topic that you wanted to talk about, you feel needs relevance in clearing up within the industry, fire away.
So I think that it's always something where developers don't have access to understanding how to do security, how to properly begin writing security from the start. Pen testing always seems like some kind of wild other world with all these crazy tools that, we don't know. And I think making that more accessible would be really helpful. So you mentioned Hack the Box earlier. I know there's tools like that, but also enabling, also like in regards to what you were saying before, enabling people to actually find those tools. So how do we go about that? I think with what you were saying, like training budgets help, but you kind of need someone to be able to do all the research as well, to be like, okay, cool, so you're interested in this, you need to go and do this. And I don't think they don't do much security teaching at university either, still, do they?
I think it's absolutely non-existent. We had a couple of entities in Scotland. For the life of me, I can't remember, but they were like Code Clan, like things like that, right? They'd been going a few years, and I think it was only like in the past kind of couple of years they started to look at the OWASP top 10, and I believe they only touched upon it for like an hour. And it's like, people need to get this out of their head that security is like some sort of a massive overhead, this non-functional requirements nonsense. It's hygiene. People want to be able to have clean code that's accurate code and it's stable, or whatever you're building, right? I'm just using these words because for me that's the kind of the description in my head around if you're deploying something, it needs to be safe and secure and stable, right?
Yeah.
3 S's we'll call it, right? I don't know. We'll maybe make some sort of a meme out of that, right? I don't know. But, it's like they're still not kind of doing it in universities either. Like somebody will go do, I don't know, MSc or whatever, and it's in computing and IT, and then it'll be like, they'll maybe touch upon, I don't know. I don't even think they touch anything but like Kubernetes layer. I think it's still kind of monolithic. I'm not saying all lecturers, because I know some lecturers or people that have been in cyber went into that to try and change it, but most of these lecturers probably don't have enough allowance or time to take a focus specifically on cyber. Now, yes, there are cyber degrees in universities and stuff like that, but I don't think they're specifically focusing on software development, which is a huge issue because there's always a battle between security and developers.
Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't be, because that's why DevSecOps was created, because it's a life cycle between each entity. But again, if you enable people, give them the tools, let them go test it, go break stuff, like chaos engineering, right? Like just go fucking insane with it, go mad, do it in a test environment, or I don't know, a sandbox. Let people try these tools. Like there's like Zap, Zap. There's so many tools like fuzzing tools. There's SAST and DAST tooling. You've probably experienced a lot of them in your career. And, something that we implemented in a company I'm working at the moment, was just allowing people to just breathe. Then people come back and say, oh, it's not fit for purpose for this language, or it does this, or it breaks at this point. And that's, to me, I love that. I love getting that feedback. They say, hey, this was amazing. Like this automates everything. Like I remember years ago, there was a tool called Veracode, and it literally, you just dump your code base in it and it just goes, shh, that's shit, we can fix it for you. Okay, bum, bum, bum. But then the problem is like, what happens if it's a current code base that's connected to multiple different services? You pull one thing down, the whole thing falls apart. And it's like, well, you should really have a patching window. You should really have tech debt maintenance, implement it into a sprint. But yeah, I don't even know. I went in a complete tangent there, going sorry.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
So one of the things with that is one of the places I worked, they would have the risk meeting where they would go through a huge thing of risks and look at how they were going to fix them, and then you'd go back the next month and they wouldn't be resolved. And it's like there was always so much what's the word? Like ceremony around it. It was fucking
Yeah.
theatre. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when people don't understand security properly, they just turn it into theatre and nothing gets done. It's just a whole bunch of meetings. And so getting people actually interested and getting rid of the theatre would help a lot as well. Have you seen a change in how universities are teaching security at all, or what are your thoughts around that?
No, I think it's very difficult to change because it's based on semesters. There must be some amount of planning before a semester starts, and each degree typically lasts anything between 4 and 5 years. So I'd imagine, I don't know, like maybe some of the content changes twice in a decade. Well, sorry, in a decade, and it'd be like that kind of makes these things difficult. But I guess like I've even seen it with like competency-based interviews, like a test task, and I think in all the companies I've ever worked in, when I was at Flow, we were the only people that would actually be quite rigorous about it, rather than bringing in someone who is going to bring in more inherent risk, rather than being like someone saying, hey, there's a cross-site scripting issue here, or there's, I don't know, buffer overflow or whatever, like glaringly obvious stuff. And then you would kind of package things and people would go use a tool like Metasploit, or maybe, I don't know, use something like Sneak, free version, and then kind of scan stuff and then be like, oh, by the way, there's an exposure here, left, right, center. And that, again, I used to enjoy it when people would say, I've never used that tool before, and it's really nice. And you go, amazing. That helps ticks a box, rather than people just being like, nah, we're not interested in it, or sitting there being like, I can't do the test task. And I think with the whole revolution of AI tools, there's loads of things that you could literally just, like, if somebody give you a test task, you could just dump that into like Claude and it'll do it for you. Do you know what I mean? But I think, well, I appreciate that, like, understanding that knowledge, because developers or engineers, I don't think they've really kind of understood that the more you know, when it comes from multiple different disciplines and multiple domains, the more you have a competitive advantage over other candidates. Like, I remember seeing roles for like SecOps or DevSecOps engineers at Netflix, and they were paying like 300-400K.
Yeah.
And it was like 2 years experience of using SAST and DAST. I'm like, come on, man. And maybe if you've used AWS or a specific tool that was native to them, and you were just like, is it really that bad? Is there such a kind of dilution that there isn't enough skill set that those salaries kind of, people, imagine if you had 10 years experience, you could write in multiple different coding languages. You'd use multiple different deployment services. You could literally go, here's 2 pages of all the tools I've ever used, and people go, you're the top earner here. You're a bar raiser. You're like an L1 or an L7, depending how your engineering levels are. That's the kind of thing. But I think, back to the whole ceremonies stuff, right? I get it as like political theatre, and I think it's like the Wizard of Oz approach that security take to try and install fear. It's a collaborative team effort. We need each other. It's like Lost, the TV show. Like, you either, what was it? I think Jack, the main character, said, what was it? Live together or die alone or something, right? It's like some saying, and it's like, we need people, because most times security teams are like under-resourced. They're dealing with so much bullshit, it's unbelievable. Or they need to get involved in something that's like stopping a preempt event. It's like, literally, we're like time travelers. We know like the asteroid's coming in like 2026, and it's like, we need to start the work now, and it's like trying to kind of convey that message, but you need to educate people. And I think that's where I'd seen such strengths in you, Gwen, like when you did your presentation, was that ability to convey that message to people, to be like, hey, this stuff is actually quite simple if you take away all the BS, if you take away the politics, this is what you need to do. Here's loads of free resources, crack on. And I think that, I'm hoping the next few generations that come into software development, that's already there inherently.
So, what's interesting? When you were talking about like the skill sets, I did so many engineering interviews, like so many interviews in general, and like for different roles. And I didn't ask about security that often unless I saw it on their CV and I was really excited. I'm like, oh my God. Like one of the dudes I worked with did an apprenticeship at GC, what's it called? GC.
GCHQ, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, that's really cool. I can ask you about that. But yeah, it's still not something we actually ask people. Like, do you have any like knowledge in this, or are you interested? A lot of the time, like, tell me how you would make this secure. It's more like, do you write tests, but not tests based on the kind of security level. But also, I think a lot of people in interviewing don't even know. So in my last role, there wasn't anyone in security. Like, we were a company of 100 people, and so we were just making it up as we went. It's like, should we get a fractional chief security officer? Like, what do we do? How do we deal with this? And we'd catch up once a month. Well, it got like, we were meant to catch up once a month. We caught up probably about twice a year in the end, because it's like, well, what are we even doing? Yeah. So for smaller startups like that, what would you suggest?
Let's talk about something that might be keeping you awake at night. Cybersecurity. According to Vanta's latest State of Trust report, it's the #1 concern for UK businesses. That's where Vanta comes in. Whether you're a startup, growing fast, or already established, Vanta can help you get ISO 27001 certified and more without the headaches. Vanta allows your company to centralize security workflows, complete questionnaires up to 5 times faster, and proactively manage vendor risk to help your team not only get compliant, but stay compliant. Stop stressing over cybersecurity and start focusing on growing your business in 2025. Check out Vanta and let us handle the tough stuff. Head to vanta.com/decloak to learn more. Because when it comes to your business, it's not just about keeping the lights on, it's about keeping everything secure. Thanks. Yeah, so obviously I've mentored a few in my time, and I think it's about understanding if there's enough competency in an organization. I'm sounding like I've been a 20-year veteran at Netflix or something when I say that, but it's like, is it like, if I'm going to start talking about technical subject matter, are they going to be able to understand it, or do I need to take it right back? Like, I'll give an example, like risk management. Like, some of my US-based people that have been on the podcast, my guests, they're so heavy on the risk management side because that helps them equate to monetary value. It helps them understand strategic positioning in the market, or maybe like stuff that they're going to develop from feature point of view. And like, that sort of, you need to find a balance, right, to understand the capability in an organization, the actual knowledge base. It never surprises me how much stuff people don't know, and you take an assumption and you're like, oh, wow, that's pretty kind of crazy. But I think with startups, again, understanding where they want to go, what type of data they have, do they understand the resources that they've got when it comes to managing that data? Do they even have a comprehension around things like GDPR? You've got certain regulations for certain countries and all these other things, and in it, hopefully you could start to build a picture of where their maturity scale is and where they need to go. And there's so many things, there's so many free tools that can help them automate that, take that thought process away. Then you can teach them the fundamental basics of, if we want to get to this part in our journey, we need to accept the level of risk that doesn't expose us but allows us to grow as a company. So things like risk appetite. Then you need to look at, is there any security champions or potential skill sets in an organization that could maybe wear multiple hats? Because listen, every startup goes through it. You're still hearing of startups that are like 10 years old and they get popped because they've never looked at security. Like, we should need to take away that embarrassment. Like, there's no shame in saying, should we really look at this? Like, is this like a problem? Is this going to be a thing? And it's like, well, actually, if you Googled a comparison between your nearest competitors, they've either got a security person, they might not, or they've been hacked, or the industry itself is being impacted by like ransomware gangs. So then it's like, right, okay, this is an actual real life seriousness that needs to be looked at. So that's typically how I would look at it. Again, I've helped out some charities before, and if they get some funding, then they'll look at like, where would we best put our money? And it's like, well, you don't have firewalls. That's probably going to be one of the first things you need to look at. endpoint, antivirus, these types of things. But again, I would say for any startup that or anybody working in a startup watches this, like, you'd be surprised. Just Google literally your question into Google, and it'll give you a bunch of answers. Or
Yeah.
I guess, I don't know, reach out to Batman and Robin here. We can help them, you know. So, but that's the kind of that's advice. But what you want to do is build a culture where people are asking questions and not afraid to ask those questions, because that is super important. Yeah.
What I found really interesting in that role as well is finding your allies if you care about something, particularly about risk. So I like thinking about risk, you know, like I did a lot of time testing. I love thinking about company risk. And so I remember raising, like, you know, we don't have a words are leaving me today. We don't have a what is it? The, like, getting everything back up and running plan. Disaster recovery. We don't have a company disaster recovery thing. Like, we should sort this out. And I couldn't get much interest from, like, C-suite, but I was like, oh, okay, the legal person and the IT person are also really excited about this. So we can build this for the company, which is really nice. And yeah, so if you find something, like, and you're not getting anywhere with raising it, maybe they'll just let you do it, like, with other people if you think it's that important, which I was like, come on, we fucking need this. This is this is madness. Yeah. So
I think it also opens an opportunity for people to have a different lens in the organisation, because it could be something that, you know, everybody in the company is like pushing towards, I don't know, a big app release or launching a product or whatever it may be, even launching on like an IPO, and there'll be something that derails it. It's like any kind of project, you're going to look at risks that destabilize the project. And I would use the same approach to, like, if you find something, you know, have an open discussion about it. You may be working in a company that wants to cover that up and hide it because they just can't be arsed dealing with it. That happens. Or you'll have other people that say, hey, I think I might have a fix for this, or I've done some research. Before you know it, you've built a guild. You've built a fellowship of multiple different people, you know, and somebody will be Gandalf and somebody will be Bilbo Baggins, and I don't know the rest of the character names because, like, it's late. So I'm just like, you know, you might actually find yourself, like, on the path to Mordor, you know, and it's just like, right, we need to dispose of this risk, the metaphoric ring. And it's like, aye, this Sauron and everything else, right? Like, there you go. I do know Lord of the Rings. Shit, I've been telling people for years I didn't, but there you go. But anyway, I digress. Yeah.
So a lot of the theme at my last company was Lord of the Rings theme. So we had, like, Entmoot, which was like where all the devs get together to discuss, like, any risks that they're seeing or anything that they don't like. And we had Treebeard, which is the person that would, like, comb through all the logs of the day. But I can't watch Lord of the Rings because it's really fucking long and it's really fucking boring.
I know, actually, I got, like, deep vein thrombosis watching one of them one time. I was like literal parrot. Like, there was something going on with my legs. I was like 4.5 hours or something watching this nonsense. I was like, you know, like having a mass fit, like, what is going on here? And
mad.
it was actually a result of something else going on at the time, but I was just like, oh my God, I just thought it was like the boredom and my brain shutting down and giving me paralysis. It was like 4.5 hours, man, it's crazy. And they're now making, like, spin-offs, Gollum movies, TV shows, and, you know, I think Amazon Studios should be sponsoring this for me, plugging them for that. But anyway,
are you going to watch all of them?
Yeah. Nah, no way. It's too much time. It's like, I can't. Like, no offense to any of the audience that are Lord of the Rings fans, right, or Tolkien people, but I'm just like, it's just not for me. I'm more a sci-fi person, so
yeah,
I'm like,
I'm the same.
You know, give me a Stargate any day of the week, and I'm like, you know, I'm happy. But anyway, yeah.
So you said something as well. So you said it's late there. Where are you, Leo?
I'm at home, but I've been up mega early. So I was actually at a gig yesterday, and that went in to the early morning. So it's late for me, basically. And it always looks really dark in this room as well. I think I need to invest in studio lights and everything else. But I'm just like, you know, I don't know. Maybe if we had 1 million views, We'll see what happens. We're not far off it, to be fair. So everyone, thanks so much for continuing to stick by the madness and the erraticness of me as your host. But yeah. Anyway, we'll move on to our last segment then, as the one thing in cyber you think is BS and needs a focus on or needs to change.
So I think it is the kind of secrecy around the tooling. Like, how do you do mobile pen testing, for instance? I don't know, like the tooling just doesn't seem that accessible or that something you can like just research and set up really easily. So I think that's probably one of the main things, just accessibility of the tooling. So if there's a tester that wants to get into security testing mobile, like I don't know where to tell them where to start. Like that's wild. Besides, like, you know, the obvious man in the middle stuff, but that's just standard testing stuff that we do. Like, yeah, I'm choosing mobile because it is like particularly kind of wild, I think.
Yeah, completely agree. I think, let me just look, like, security teams, no, I'm not speaking for everyone, right? I've been in both sides of it, and it's like, maybe we forget to include people in architect design review or architect design record, depending how you pronounce your ADR, where it's like, hey, here's a problem. This is what we're looking to implement. Maybe getting feedback from people like, hey, we need 10 people to test this product. It's called Sneak or whatever it might be, SAST and DAS tool or something specific to, I don't know, mobile testing. I don't know. There's 1,000 different tools, right? And then being like, maybe getting people just to, on a 2-week sprint, just to kind of toy around with it. So then they feel part of that process and it's organic to them. And I tend to find like picking your best people in a company with these tools because they're going to give you honest feedback. They're going to pull the thing apart. They're going to probably find something that's very native to them and not native to you and highlight clear glaring gaps. Like I think I've mentioned before we recorded, you know, where you implement a tool and it might be missing a specific, it doesn't deal with libraries or it doesn't deal with certain languages. But then getting people involved in proof of concept. So get them on the vendor call so they can see how much of a pain in the ass it is to like listen to people waffle on, you know, vendor slides, vendor presentations, and, you know, and then they understand it. So you're actually going through this whole rigmarole to get us a tool that's going to automate and make our life easier and have less friction with security teams. Cool, right, okay. And that's, I think, really helps. And then do it in bursts, start with like small teams or small clusters of people and then ramp it up. And before you know it, you've covered one team, then it's like 10 teams, and depending if you're working a tribe mindset as well, next thing you know, you've got a full village using it. So I guess it's like making people part of that journey rather than hiding it and being like, you know, why have you deployed this? And it's like, is someone trying to find me out? And it's like, I get it. Like I've deployed endpoint tools and like communicated the life out of it, and you'll still get someone saying, what is this? And it's like, because people are busy, they're not going to read thousands of emails, they're not going to read thousands of Slack messages or Teams messages. That's just the nature of how it is, right? So we need to continuously educate people, make them part of that problem, part of the solution, and be like, so they can give their voice, because then what you'll find is they'll want to run with it. And then they'll be people we go to and say, by the way, looking at this dashboard, and then you start to gamify it. So you might get certain teams that start to get, I don't know, being like, well, what about team A over there? They're closing X amount. You know, is that going to be part of my performance review? If you're really tactical and clever, you can put that into company performance reviews within engineering. And then people can say, well, I closed 50,000 bugs or 50,000 vulnerabilities because I took this team, I ran it, I trained people in my team. And then that shows them switching from one level of engineering to another. And that's really good for career progression, in my opinion, because it shows that they've taken that responsibility. They've shown leadership. They're also shown probably a multitude of your company values, the training of other people, and just driving something forward. because that's what engineering's about, is driving forward, not looking back and being like, I can't be arsed patching something from 30 years ago. It's like, but we've hit the glass ceiling here. We need to fix the tech debt. That's the only way you build forward. You know, I like Elon Musk was talking about it recently about he'd went in and these guys like, oh, we can't do that. And he's like, all of you are fired. Him and I think his nephew or his cousin flown in. They pulled loads of servers apart, and then they were like, not only did they have better uptime, they had like less tech debt to deal with or physical hardware debt. They were just like, half of the stuff we didn't even need. You know, and it's like that's what you need. You need that whole kind of chaos engineering mindset where people are experimenting, they're pushing things to the boundaries. And then what you'll actually find is when it comes to beer and pizza nights, or you're having, I don't know, security champions events, you'll find people just like really passionate and getting crazy about it. Like, I don't know if you've ever had any like really super passionate security champions or events where starts getting a bit crazy. You're holding people back, you know.
I've worked with a couple of people that were like really into it, but again, it was like we're into it, but we don't know, like we can't find all the knowledge. One bit where I have seen it get a lot better is being able to implement things like tools in your pipelines. So a couple of like probably about maybe 6 years ago, there weren't so many like tools, and now there's open source tools that you can chuck in your CI. And so more open source tooling that people can just like download and mess around with would probably be cool. Because some of the kind of like code review security tools are still really expensive and really slow as well. But
I agree. Like, you're better off starting with the open source stuff and always remember to update it and patch it, and also watch for license expansion, because you don't want to be like, oh, it's open source, and then you get, I don't know, 1,000 engineers using it, and then someone chaps at the door and says the actual limitation was like you're using it enterprise, but it should just be individual basis. And that's another thing that trips people up. But the open source stuff is a gateway, because then it allows people to get familiar with certain tools. And then you implement, I don't know, SAST and DAST or stuff directly into CLI or whatever. And then it's like CNAP, CSPM tools. And then people are like, that's like this tool I used. So it's easier for them to use. Like Sneak, that's the whole premise of Sneak. They basically took loads of open source tools, put a kind of nice label on it, a front end. And it's like, you know, when we were experimenting with it in different companies, people were like, I've already used this before, but it was called this. And then it's like, thank God, that's going to be easy adoption. So I think
cool.
The open source stuff definitely, I think, is the gateway drug towards, you know, kind of, you know, anything you're going to pay for. And it also helps a proof of value. So then you can say, hey, we've already used these tools, but they're limited. We need to then go to the next level, which is going to cost $20,000 or $30,000 or whatever. Or even if you're running these expensive tools as a proof of value, proof of concept, most of these vendors will give you like a month just to toy about with them. Then you've got all your nice data. You can then go to people that have the funds internally and say, we've had adoption of X developers or engineers. We've then found this. We've fixed that. Here was the risk. You know, if we deploy this, somebody's going to pop the app and then do, I don't know, they're going to get all the data or whatever it might be. So, that's my kind of take on it. Yeah.
So, with getting developers have you managed to get developers to mess around with tools like that, like open source tools, and suggest things? And do you do that through Slack time, like where they have time to explore, or do you have like a bunch of tools that they can have a look at, or how do you manage it?
We just on Slack, again, like just having a kind of open door where people want to talk about it, say, hey, I've seen this tool, it can do X, Y, Z. Because we know every single tool that's been used in the company. So then we can say, like, we've seen it, like the duplication, like somebody wants to do something and it's like, actually there's like 2 other tools just like this. So we don't need to go spend the money, or why don't you try these 2 other tools? Because there's already a forum of individuals who can provide advice, rather than someone coming in like, hey, I'm doing this new tool, we're using it, and nobody in the company knows what the hell it is, or the kind of problems that you might find with it. Yeah.
How do you go about So because people often, well, security have the same problem that engineers often have, where people are like, they're those people in the corner. We won't ask them anything. How do you go about making security more open to the rest of the company, where people will come and be like, hey, I found this tool?
I think it's about showing transparency. It's about being
Yeah,
vulnerable as well. There's no shame in security teams asking for help either. It goes both ways, because if you're like, hey, here's an idea or here's a problem we found, we're going to run these tools, does anybody want to use them? Then
cool.
what you'll actually find is you're going to get someone who's super keen, or someone who wants to really prove a point to security. And before
Yeah,
you know it, you're having a good conversation. If you're fortunate enough to be working in an office or whatever it may be, then just go have a breakout session, go have like a mini sprint over an hour or two and be like, right, let's challenge each other. Let's try and make this fun and be like, you pick this part, I pick this part. Let's swap over at halftime and then kind of see where the synergy is. And then, you'll draw up, I don't know, maybe a nice lucid diagram of all the kind of crossovers or all the questions. So you just put, I used to love doing that big whiteboard, loads of post-it notes and be like, this doesn't work, this works, I'm struggling here, and have a bubble. And what you'll find is the person in engineering will say, actually, you've got 10 tickets there or 10 post-it notes in that circle. I've got one here, I'll get rid of all of them. And it's like amazing. It's about, helping each other, scratch each other's back. So what you'll find is when you're giving people a problem and you're asking for their help, the human condition means we just need to help each other. That's just how it is.
yeah.
And it's even worse when you lock the door and there's no windows. And it's like, listen, we're spending 2 hours on this, so adapt or perish. And also, like, I think security people, have come against situations where people don't want to use tools,
Yeah.
or they're in a really old school environment. I've been in these situations where people are like, oh, I'm not using that, I don't want to do it. It's like, sometimes you won't have a choice, right? And I don't mean to sound harsh. If you don't want to
Yeah.
adapt to a good culture, or adapt to an engineering mindset, maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's not the place for you to work. You can go and, go work somewhere that's monolithic and 20 years out of date. And, with all your
Totally.
friends and colleagues that you've made in your organization, they're heading towards the future, and it's like the same with like the whole AI stuff that's come out. And, there'll
Mm-hmm.
be things where people are just like, this tool's like telling me what to do, and they kind of panic from it rather than just being like learning. But was that your cat in the background?
Oh
Was
my
that a
God,
cat?
my cat howls all the time. Yeah. Alfie, come here. Yeah. He is a very howly man.
Do you know what's
Oh,
crazy?
he's
I don't know,
just looking
when
around.
you were shouting for your cat, I was half expecting it to come in like Dick Whittington, or Puss in Boots, just like coming in. Don't know.
Here he
More stuff
is.
I guess we can add in. There we go, everyone. This is, did you say Alfie?
Yeah, Alfie.
I think
He's
he just needed
ridiculous.
some attention. He's probably just like
Yeah.
sick of hearing like us talking and being like, yeah.
So he used to love it when I had meetings. I think he's missed me like sitting at this desk so he could come and harass me while I'm talking to someone, basically. Yeah. So yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, so uh
Yeah.
when you've like, I love how you do that. I absolutely love how you've done that. Have you had people like, have you taken people on for secondments to security when you've had people pairing with you or anything like that?
No, there's never really, I mean, apart from security champions initiatives, there's never
Yeah.
really been, I guess, resourcing or
Yeah.
time. Obviously, I've did lots of mentoring, but I guess security champions is probably the closest we'll get to
Hmm.
that. Is maybe someone's allowed 2 hours a week to come and spend time or get trained up in something. And what you'll find is people either kind of want to go down a super technical route, or they want to just do something completely different that still adds value to the company, but maybe closer to their skill set and their respective area. So that's about the closest. What about yourself?
So, talking to you has made me realize I've not worked at many companies where there is like a friendly specialist security team. So, like at Sky, I was really lucky because one of the security dudes sat behind me, and so I could be like, "Please Paul, I have no idea what I'm doing. Please help me. And that was really cool. But he was like the first person that I got to work with properly on security. And then I haven't really gotten to work with anyone since, which is a shame. Like, because it does seem like so often it is outsourced, and that restricts the learning so much, doesn't it? Because you can't go and pair with the pen testers or anything like that.
I think when people outsource or completely decentralize security, it loses the heart and soul. There is a code to which security professionals adhere to. They take it very seriously because it's their livelihood, and they also don't want a breach on their watch. It's like the old, we don't want the White Walkers getting through, we don't want them marching on King's Landing, do you know what I mean? So, because it could result in job losses, it could result in like huge embarrassment as well. Like, I know of CISOs that have been in situations that went in an interview and they've been like, but you had a data breach at this company, without the interviewee understanding the complex nature, the politics that go behind it as well.
Yeah.
And it's quite kind of difficult. But I mean, security is everybody's responsibility. People just either aren't aware of that or they don't want to know. It's the age old, like, I don't know, you have a medical ailment and you don't go get it seen about, and it's like a 5-minute fix or 10-minute fix, and then it builds up over years and it becomes catastrophic eventually. And it's like, that's what happens. And you're getting script kiddies. Like, I seen a video recently of somebody like 11, 12 years old, and they were absolutely murdering companies, but under the guidance of their parents, and they were like created this consultancy company, and it was like a huge, huge thing that they get involved in. And it was like, where is the kind of, you don't attack a company, then tell them they've got an issue. You engage them first and say, here are my services, I'm quite unique, give me a chance. Then they can find stuff. So again, like, decentralizing security only works if you have the culture that people want it decentralized, rather than being like, oh, we're not doing cloud security, so give that to the infrastructure team. And it's like, the infrastructure guys might not know anything about cloud security. Ironically, that's still a thing. It's the same with like, pen testing, just outsource it. And it's like, well, if you had an in-house specialist, they could train people and then create a better quality assurance and just kind of better management of that. But I guess every company's their own.
So when you said security's everybody's responsibility, I don't know if I told you how I ended up basically the way that I ended up like getting more interested in security was I was at a meetup, and Jay, who is a pen tester that I used at my last company, but reason we used him is because I knew him from beforehand from this argument, which is he was saying that it's everyone's responsibility. I'm like, mate, I've got so many things to think about already. Like, everyone's always like trying to get us to shift left further and further, and I don't have the fucking time for that. And then I was just like, next time I saw him, I was like, Jay, I was so fucking wrong. And thanks for the argument, because you were right. Like, and it totally changed things for me. And it is hard to get past that. Like, I've got so many things to think about part, but I guess kindness gets there.
Yeah, I think, again, it's like an invisible enemy, right? If people don't know it's there, it's like a ghost. If you don't know it's there, all sorts of poltergeist shit's going to happen, heads are spinning. It's like The Exorcist, it's going to be like absolutely insane, but it's like, you really need to take people on a journey, and it's going to take time. Like, I don't know a single person, like, I'm talking elite CISOs, top 100 Hall of Famers that have walked into a place and turned it around like that instantly. Most of them say it takes a year just to embed the right type of culture. Then in year 2, you start to see results, and by year 5, hopefully, if you've survived long enough, these come into fruition. But the reason it's everybody's responsibility, because an army of, let's say your company's 500 people, an army of 500 people is better than the one security person.
Yeah.
Right? It's only fair. And also, if you don't have that awareness, or that kind of, I'm not saying you need to have a war frontier mindset, right? But if you don't have that awareness, then it results in job losses.
Yeah.
I've seen people being hit with data breaches and they're like, we need to wind up the company, or they're like, we need to get rid of 50% of the headcount. Nobody wants to see people lose their job.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many like minuscule things that people can do, like literally report something like this email looks a bit fishy. Oh, it's a phishing email. See what I did there? Love it. Or things like multi-factor authentication. People are like, I'm not adding that because it takes me literally 2.2 seconds to implement. It's like, man, grow up. You know, you wouldn't have your Instagram hacked or your Facebook or whatever it might be, or your bank. So you apply it to every day, like your accounts.
Mm-hmm.
But there are really good tools that just let you take 1 or 2 clicks and you can access everything, and everything's safe. It's in an enclaved environment. And then you've got the whole kind of like, oh, but leadership, don't take it seriously. Make it about them because they're egocentric.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Totally.
I've never met a single person at these levels that is focused on that level of detail. Why would they be? They're there to run the company. They're there to, I don't know, do whatever it is they need to do at that level. But it's like if you relate it to like day-to-day stuff, like, have you seen this hack? Have you seen this? Or this, that somebody could hack your kids. Someone could profile you, you know, social engineer you. You know, it's like once kind of people start to realise that, it's like, it's insane. I met a billionaire once, right? Gil Schwad, former CEO of Checkpoint, and people were asking him all these questions, and he's like, do you know why I've got a guy behind me, a guy in the balcony, and a guy at the front door? It's like, because I'm a CEO of a company, and there's people coming all the time, even though he was the guy that invented the firewall, built Checkpoint, did really well for himself. He's like, virtually, he's safe because he has a specialist phone and everything else.
Yeah.
But he's like, physically, he's like, what's to stop, I don't know, a terror group or certain people coming in and you're literally holding them for ransom.
That's mad.
Like that's the mindset you need. It's the same like, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know, if you're a VP or something or an SVP or whatever it might be, you know, you need to start thinking that hackers and specific ransomware groups or whatever it may be, or criminal organizations, they're going to find a way. But the more you make it difficult for them, ironically, they're not going to bother. You know, that defense in depth, as they say. But I know I went in a total tangent, you know, almost turned into a Mission Impossible movie in that description. But it's like, you know, it is serious. Like the amount of people, like, I've come off certain social media platforms because it was happening. You know, I've had people impersonate me before. I've had people do stuff that's absolutely crazy, and then you're having to go on LinkedIn and be like, hey, that's not me posting that stuff because, well, I don't have the time. Yeah. Even if I do agree with the opinion or I don't agree with it, it's like, you know, but you need to kind of clarify. And you've also got things like deep fakes. Like, I think there was a CFO that had a deep fake attacked on them, and they signed off on, like, I think it was like 20 million.
Oh my God, I've not seen that.
They were tricked into giving things away. But yeah, everyone, that's us concluded tonight's episode. And I'd like to thank Gwen for her time being on the episode and being a huge source of entertainment and making me go on a multitude of different parallels. And again, Gwen, it's always good to see you. And thanks again for your time. I appreciate it.
Cheers. It was so ace to see you, Leo. Like, yeah, it's been ages. And yeah, it was really nice to talk security because I can learn so much from you as well, because I don't, you know, this isn't usually my space. I just love teaching it for some reason. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. And to all the listeners, I hope you have a great day. Party on. Bye.